we're talking about death by fiscal note and all the rest of that. I'd like to really kind of change that rhetoric. And, you know, I'd like to almost like truth in legislation or something along that line, because we need to know this great idea that you had, that you put into statute, what is the outcome? What's the cost? I mean, that's what we're talking about in revenue right now. That's what we're talking about in appropriate. We pass these bills, what's the cost? And that's what they're about. And yeah, they get the information from the agencies. Did they question that information? Did they work with you on shall or will or parsing language? They generally do that. If you ask about a fiscal note, you say, hey, I didn't realize it was going to be this much. What's the assumptions? And so they'll talk to you. They'll do the assumption. They'll give you some information that says, maybe we can pare this down if we do this. That's what they're willing to do. So we need to understand that process. September 15th, agencies dropped their budget. And I can tell you that I've seen the budget on Health and Human Services. You can weigh it and measure it. It's that deep. And we have tasked that person with the idea of taking all that information and distilling it out so that we can understand it. We can put it in a line item as an agency request. We can understand what the modifications are. That's what's going on between September 15th and actually before we start. So the idea that they can handle it, maybe hire some more people, my goodness, it takes three to 5 years of training to get somebody even close to being up to speed. So, yeah, we can probably take a look at this. I would almost suggest at this point, because of what I'm hearing on the floor, let's pull this out. Let's take a look at it on an interim basis, on an interim study basis, have people understand all of the working parts of what we do. I don't deny the fact that we need to have good, accurate, independent information.
1 minute.
Don't deny that at all. In fact, that's what I would like to see all the time, and I believe they produce that product. But these people are professionals down there. They do care. They don't want to have a situation where they have to speed that process up just to hit a deadline that we put there and really not hit that level of excellence that they expect of themselves and that we expect of them. And there's another section of this rule. When it comes up, I can go through this process of what happens when that bill is dropped, how many days it takes to do this and that, and what are the critical triggers in the process, and why we're trying to adjust that process to accommodate 48 is my suggestion. It'll be another amendment, but we're trying to accommodate what you want. That's more time with that fiscal note. I think the fiscal office has taken a look at the process. They'd like some adjustments to make it work, and you will have a finished product at the level that we all expect. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Stinner. Senator Watermeyer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Nebraska. I rise kind of in opposition to proposed rule number 3 unless the amendment from Senator Stinner would pass. And just let me give you a little bit of history that I think it's a matter of a workload for the fiscal office. I've become to appreciate a lot more the workload that they do for all of us. And this will be really short and sweet, but it's just a matter that I'm going to be totally opposed to this rule unless we can have the amendment. I do want to address another comment that Senator Hart talked about, the billions and the billions and the billions of dollars that appropriations handle. Well, I can sum it up in about really much quicker than that. There's $1 billion that goes to education. There's $1 billion that goes to HHS. There's $1 billion that's totally undiscretionary. And we have this tiny little piece that's discretionary. Now, Senator Mello, the last 2 and 3 years ago, came to the floor with about $56 million for us to work on. That's not billions of dollars, but that was very realistic for us to work on. So put it in perspective, when we come to the floor, we aren't going to be able to manage billions and billions of dollars. We really don't manage billions of dollars in appropriations because of the discretionary allowances that we have. So just keep that in mind for everybody that's working on this. Now, I'm not going to support a lot of effort to put a lot more pressure on the fiscal office. Their workload is extremely heavy. They do very important work for us. It's a political arrangement as well because they have to reach out to the revenue. The revenue has to look at these bills, it has to come back to the governor's office. So just keep in mind, we start asking more and more. A lot of this is out of their hands in the same way that the billions and billions of dollars are out of our hands. So be very careful with rules that we propose to put restrictions on our own fiscal office. They are very good people. We lose some of these people. It won't just take a matter of rehiring somebody. It take a year or two to rehire, retrain, and get a fiscal analyst up to speed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Watermeyer. Senator Bowles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with Senator Watermeyer, and what I had to share this morning is not only a reiteration of how hard the fiscal office works and how much we appreciate you, for those of you who are listening downstairs, but also maybe a comment or two about how I've learned to use the fiscal office in a way that maybe doesn't require a rule like this. Meaning, if you have a question about how much something might cost, what the target population for something might be, what the federal matching funds for a particular piece of legislation might be, you can walk down and talk to the fiscal analyst, and they'll do their best to provide the information that they have. Now, granted, this won't be in a formal fiscal note that you can take to the floor or take to the bank, but you can get this information in an informal way. And so I question the necessity of the rule at all, and I agree with Senator Stinner's amendment. I also just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the fiscal office for the work that they've done. I think they are folks that deserve a little kudos, particularly because this is their maximum workload time. Right now, they are not only helping to develop fiscal notes for everyone's bills, but they are answering my pesky questions related to the budget, as well as trying to calculate utilization rates, the cost savings related to vacancies, the cost of utilities, checking and double checking numbers with the agency. And so my biggest concern about these types of changes is that it could impact the fiscal office's maximum workload time. So it's one thing to ask for additional information or ask for additional fiscal notes or expedite a fiscal note in July. It's quite another to ask in January. And so I think the compromise language that Senator Stinner has brought forward is very reasonable. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we're protecting our institution and our tools. So the fiscal office is our fiscal analysis. The administration may have a different fiscal analysis, and that is fair and legitimate, but at the end of the day, we have to protect the tools in the legislature's toolbox. This body always defers to the legislative fiscal office's fiscal analysis. That is our source of deference. That is the bill that gets on this floor, and so we need to make sure that they can do what they need to do. So with that, Mr. President, I support the Stinner amendment. I'm still thinking about the proposed rule overall, but wanted to make sure that the body not only knew that there are alternative ways to solve these problems or to get the information that they need, but also to understand the pressure that can be placed on the fiscal office and the important work that they do for those of us in appropriations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bowles. Senator Chamber, you're recognized, and this is your third time to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the legislature, so you won't be surprised, here's how I will fight the budget to hold it. Since I'm going to be talking about the judiciary, I will read the totality of various cases I fought in front of the Supreme Court and won. I'll read them, I'll comment on them as I go along. I've had lawyers